last tutorial we looked at basic calibration, just a way to set your theremin up so that it'll function as a theremin should. But the Moog Theremini has a lot more to offer than just that basic calibration. You can calibrate a lot of things and there are a lot of options. If you have firmware version 1.1, which you probably do if you've purchased your Theremini fairly recently, then you are going to be able to benefit by what I'm about to show you. There are shortcuts. There are ways to scroll through memories. There's a quick way to exit out of the menus. All kinds of menu options. There are more than I'm actually going to cover. But what I'm going to cover, I think, are the most relevant and probably the most valuable for theremin players. Everyone that I have worked with so far in private sessions and in emails, they purchased a Theremini primarily to be able to use it as a theremin and play music as any thereminist would. But there are lots of other things you can do, and we're going to be looking at them next time. But for now, let's take a look at all of the different menu options you have. And as I said, some of them are going to be very valuable to you as a thereminist. First, regarding the shortcuts. For menu navigation, you hold the setup button down and turn the preset knob and it will scroll through your setup options. Hold the setup button down and turn the preset button clockwise and you'll see all of these things come up now. You'll notice that you can't really get out of it. And the way to do that is hold the setup button and press Effect, and you're out. That is how you simply scroll through all of your options. We'll discuss how to scroll through the internal settings with each option a little bit later. For now, let's take some of these different calibrations one at a time. So you see how easy it is to scroll through things. Now there are a number of things in the Theremini manual that are even shorter shortcuts, but I've found them to be somewhat undependable. So what I'm going to do with shortcuts and skipping steps is the easiest way that I've found to be able to do it. Let's start with your first option, the note range. Now, this does not necessarily require that you be able to read music, but you need to understand at least what notes you are choosing. The note range allows you to set the actual frequency range of the Theremini. It's an internal setting that, during your standard calibration, is completely absent. You need to know how to get to it and use it. What it does is set the actual note for your highest note and your lowest note. To be able to set the note range, you hold down the setup button and turn your preset knob one click clockwise. Hold down the setup button and turn it. That quickly. Now if you hold your finger too long on the setup button, it will take you to the standard calibration, so you want to do it very quickly. Now take a look at the screen. Your on-screen prompt reads low and high. My lowest note is set at C2 and my highest note is set at C7. Let's take a look at what that means. As you saw from the on-screen prompt, my theremin's range is from C2 to C7. C4 is middle C. C2 is two more octaves lower. So my lowest note at C2 is here. My highest note is C7, 3 octaves above middle C. So my full range for some reason in the manual itself, the default setting when the instructions are shown is from C2 to G#5, which is a very short range for the theremin. To change the note range, we just use the preset knob. If you start turning clockwise, the note goes higher, but you will not hear the difference for the low note range. Regardless of where you put it, you're not going to hear much of a difference, but I keep mine set at C2. To change to your high note range, press Setup. Now you will hear the difference as you change things. Clockwise makes it higher, counterclockwise goes lower. I don't have much use for any note higher than C7, so I keep mine set at C7. There's another option, sort of adjunct to the volume control, and that is auto mute, which on your Theremin by default is set to yes. But take a look. Now, to get to the next preset, Setup button, and we're on auto mute. Auto mute means exactly what the on-screen prompt says it does. Mute when your pitch hand is far away. I keep it set at yes. This constrains the sound of your Theremin. The minute your hand moves outside the control space range that you set up during initial calibration, the Theremin will be quiet. If you change the preset to no, your Theremin will never be quiet. No matter where you are, it's going to make a sound. Keep it set to yes. That's the best advice I can give you for that one. We go to the next by pressing the Setup button, and now we're on auto tuning. A4 is standard tuning for most instruments. I just keep it the way it is. I'm sure you've all used your volume knob to turn the volume up and down. And, you know, the speaker inside of the Theremin is pretty small, and you've probably found that it is a little tough to hear at times. It can be soft. So there's a master volume control that you have access to as well. Take a look. All right, so to instantly access your master volume control, press the Setup button and turn your preset knob one click counterclockwise. And there's your master volume. You'll notice that mine is set at 92. After experimenting, this seems to be a really good volume level and also does not result in distortion or blowing out the little speaker in your Theremin. So, how do you adjust it once you're here? It's very simple. Turn your preset knob clockwise or counterclockwise. Counterclockwise reduces the volume, as you can hear. Turning it clockwise increases the volume. Simple as that. Press Setup and Effect, and you're out. Okay, now we're going to get to the good stuff. The advanced setup calibrations. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's start. The most reliable way to get to the advanced setup menu is to scroll to it. It's at the end of all of your standard calibrations. Hold the Setup button and turn the preset knob clockwise. And you notice that it's going through all... Let's stop here for a second. MIDI CV control voltage setup. I have never used MIDI equipment, nor do I have a MIDI setup of any kind when I'm making music. So, you can use the manual to look at this, but also I am quite honestly unqualified to speak about MIDI and all of the settings within this calibration set. So, maybe you can find something online. To exit, press Setup and Effect, and now we're back. Let's scroll to the Advanced Setup menu. Setup, and turn the preset knob clockwise until you reach Advanced Setup. Take a look. It says press Effect for Advanced Setup, and that's what we're going to do. You press the Effect button once, and now we're at the first on-screen prompt, and we're going to take each one of these individually. The first is response. Let's talk about that for a second. The response speed serves two functions sort of joined together. Response speed controls the response, to some extent the sensitivity of your movements when involving the pitch antenna or the volume antenna. But it's also a filter, and that is primarily what it's there for, in that the filtration actually cancels out a lot of what would normally be interference, buzzing, fluttering, all kinds of anomalies caused by the Theremini's circuitry itself or caused by anything external, fluorescent lighting, how much electronic equipment you have in the room, and so on. The slow response speed has the greatest amount of filtration, but it can muddy the response off the volume loop and the pitch rod. By default, your Theremin is set at medium, which is a happy medium, essentially, that allows you to play relative sensitivity, and there is a fairly discernible difference between medium and fast. Now, the fast response speed has the least amount of filtering. So you can experiment with this on your own and see how it works in your space. If you can get the response speed set at fast without hearing a lot of buzzing, or maybe the radio comes through your amplifier or the little speaker in the Theremin, without any interference, if it really sounds good and nice and clean, that is going to give you the sharpest response possible off of the volume loop in particular and the pitch rod. As I've said, the medium preset for this is probably your best bet, but if you wanted to change it, you simply use the preset knob. For slow, that's one click counterclockwise, or fast, one click clockwise. It's as simple as that. You'll do no harm by experimenting. And remember, it has so much to do with interference from other external forces. So, adjust, experiment, and see what you can do with it. The next calibration you can make in advanced setup says calibration wait time. And this could be of quite a lot of use to you. For your calibration wait time, you'll get a good explanation when you see everything in close-up. But I'm going to tell you something that I'm also going to tell you when you see it in close-up, because I cannot stress this enough. I've seen it with 4 Theremini owners in the past 2 months, and they believe that their Theremini has been broken or something has gone wrong. And here is what the problem has always been. Even though they're using the default calibration wait time of 2 seconds, it is absolutely imperative any time you are using your calibration and you have to hold your hand near the volume antenna or the pitch antenna. Reverse that. You know what I mean. Anytime you have to hold it for the countdown, which by default is 2 seconds, I thought it was 3, but it's 2. You've got to wait until that countdown is completely finished before moving your hand. If you move your hand away even a microsecond before that countdown has finished, you will send the Theremin out of whack. I've helped people recalibrate, which is all you really have to do. But particularly if you move your hand from the pitch antenna or the volume antenna before the countdowns are done, you are going to end up either with no sound or totally weird control space that doesn't work in some places and works in others, weird harmonics, overtones, possibly stuck in the high range or stuck in the low range. If this happens to you, that is what the problem has been. You did not hold your hand there until the end of the countdown. All you have to do to fix it is turn the Theremin off and start the calibration process. Even if you hear no sound, do the calibration process very carefully, and by the time you finish your far volume, I'm 99% sure your Theremin will be okay. So let's take a closer look. The next adjustment you can make in advanced setup is your calibration wait time, which is the time the Theremin takes to count down when you are setting any particular calibration, such as the distance for your near pitch, the distance from your far pitch, and so on. You always notice that it counts down. The default, I believe, is 2 seconds. And here's a word of warning. I do not recommend any time longer than 3 seconds. That's specifically because if by some chance you do not hold your hand where it needs to be for the complete countdown and you remove it prior to it reaching 0, you're going to mess up the calibration of your theremin. You go to the preset knob and turn it clockwise, and you can see that I'm increasing the time by 1 second. It's at 7 seconds now. I prefer to keep it at 3, or you can go 2 or 1. Now for theremin mode, we just click setup, and we're there. Theremin mode. As I mentioned, all of the Theremini owners that I have worked with since the new year, since January, have all purchased the Theremini so that they could play it like a normal theremin. And of course, you've got preset 01, which is classic theremin, and we've discussed how to calibrate using that so it behaves like a theremin. However, by default, the note range is set. So your lowest note will be whatever the note range says it's going to be, and so will your highest note. What Theremin mode allows you to do is still have those as a preset, but it will behave like a normal theremin. In other words, it will go below the note you've set as your lowest note and higher than the note you've set as your highest note. It will behave much more like a true theremin that is not the Theremini. That's really all it does, but it does allow you that leeway. Here's how you do it. To turn theremin mode on or off, just turn the preset button. One click clockwise or back, on, off. Simple as that. I'll keep mine on for now. Let's go to the next screen. To be honest with you, load from preset correction, the scale root, and the effect mix you can scroll through simply by pressing the setup button each time. And when you read about these in the Theremini's various manuals and addendums, they're still pretty difficult to understand. I have 5 words for all of these particular presets. I don't mess with them. Next. Here we are at the contrast screen. This prompt refers to the brightness or the relative contrast in the on-screen prompt itself. I believe the default is 72, and if we turn the preset knob counterclockwise, you may notice a little bit more contrast, but not by much, so I keep it at 72. However, if you turn the knob clockwise and increase, you'll notice that the screen gets pretty much completely obscured, so I just keep mine at 72. And that does it for your advanced setup. Press setup to exit, and we are back. There you go. A lot more options, a lot more calibrations to make, a lot more to choose from. And as you've seen, there are some that I'm not qualified to deal with, and others, I don't mess with them. I'm happy with the calibrations that I've shown you and what I've been able to do with them. Finally, next time, we're going to start looking at doing some really unique things about making music on the Theremini.